Continuing completed classics. Fulfilling failed franchises. Reinvigorating reviled rehashes. It's the follow-up Showdown! With Paul Getz, Travis McMaster, and Lauren Picardi.
Hello and welcome to the follow-up Showdown 2 Nerds in Quarantine, where we still give worthy second chapters to stories that don't have them. I am your host, whose name here in the Matrix is Paul Getz, but my hacker name is Honka. I worked very hard on that, and I'm not looking for notes. With me, thankfully, are my co-hosts, Travis McMaster and Lauren Picardi, whose hacker names are...
Lawless.
Also Trinity.
Okay, now, just to clarify, does that mean your hacker name is Trinity, or the full name is...
Excellent question, Paul. No, there is Trinity, and then I am also Trinity. We don't both go by Trinity.
Okay, great. If this is the first time you're joining us, the way it goes is we take a movie with either no sequel or a sequel that doesn't exactly stick the landing, and each make a pass at coming up with a more appropriately epic epilogue. This time, our subject is the Matrix series. Now, when we're lucky, we get to do this with the aid of a guest, and today we've got a doozy. Next level Matrix fan, staunch defender of the sequels, and lifelong BFF of our own Travis McMaster, Mario Colli. Greetings, Mario. Now hit me with that hacker name.
Hi, guys. First time caller, no time listener. I go by the name Aquacon.
I really thought you were going to go with Sir Droids.
Oh, yeah.
My guess was Aquacong just because I know that's your email, and I figured that had maybe some long-standing meaning to you.
It does, indeed. Mario. It's very important. My father used to tow me behind a boat in the Florida Ocean, and they called me Aqua Boy. And then I used to work at King Kong, which was a theme park ride.
So naturally, you called yourself King Aqua.
Yes.
Okay, I am going to try to keep us moving today as best I can. When it comes to you two, I'm not so sure how that's going to go. So I want to start with possibly the most important question there is on this subject. Who has the coolest sunglasses in the Matrix?
Niobe.
Morpheus.
Whoa. Yeah, it's Morpheus. Niobes are uncomfortable looking.
They're cool, though.
She looks like a bug.
So we have two for Morpheus, correct? That's Travis and Mario for Morpheus.
Yes.
Yes.
Now, for me, in the first one, I thought it might be Agent Smith. Then in the second one, that shifted very quickly to the Dreadlock twins, because they have some cool shades. But the one that I ended up choosing as my absolute favorite pair was a sort of side character who is in the crew of the Logo ship under Niobe. His name is Vector. You'll have to look it up, but he's got the coolest shades, I think.
Oh, don't Google Vector Matrix.
Okay, fair point. Okay, so before we start rolling into the subject at hand, let's do a 2 Travis McMaster minutes. 2 Travis McMaster minutes. Travis, are you up for it?
God, no, of course not. Let's try.
Let's try. Okay, so you're just going to be doing the Matrix trilogy in 2 minutes.
It's hard. I would like to extend to our guest and Uber Matrix fan the challenge of describing the plot of the Matrix trilogy in 2 minutes.
I'm willing to give this my all.
Okay, you ready? Let me know when you're ready.
Okay.
Go.
We meet our main character, who is Neo, but we don't know that yet, and he has a boring job, but he stays up nights looking for people on the internet because he's heard some weird shit. He finds enough information to get his way to the attention of Morpheus and Trinity, and then Trinity finds him and is like, hey, you're not crazy, you should keep looking, and we're going to come find you. Then he gets a cool phone that everybody wanted to own for like a hot minute, and he runs out of his office, but then chickens out. And they catch him. And then he's interrogated by the Man, which is literally like the most monolithic version of the Man ever. It's just like guys in suits who have unending authority and don't have to answer to anyone. And he's like, fuck you. And he does the best middle finger in the history of movies. They release him. The good guys show up. She calls him a copper top, which confused the living shit out of me forever because his hair is black. But it's because he's being used as a battery still. They explain the Matrix to him. They wake him up. Lauren has an incredible fan theory that the reason he's able to repair that mirror is because he doesn't realize it yet, but he is the one, and he uses his Neo powers like fledglingly to fix that mirror. Anyway, they kick him out of the Matrix. He wakes up. They grab him with a big hook thing. They teach him how to be the one. It's a very Jesus analogy. He gets shot to death, and then he comes back to life, and then he kills the bad guy. Then he flies into the sky and Rage Against the Machine plays. Excellent choice. Start our second movie. The toys are out of the box. We find out that Zion is the place where all the people are, and the machine do not like them and are going to kill them. So they go into the Matrix, and it turns out that Agent Smith is also back from when Neo killed him in the first movie. He got to the source and was like, I don't like this. I'm going to go do whatever I want. And now he doesn't have an earpiece. There is a fight. He goes back to talk to the Oracle, who is a lady I should have brought up by now, but didn't. There's a big kung fu battle with lots of Smiths because it turns out that once Smith doesn't have to do anything, he can just do whatever he wants. And what he wants is to turn the Matrix into himself. Meanwhile, they're looking for the keymaker because they're trying to get back to the source, which is something that they have been told they need to do by, I want to say the machines indirectly, or the prophecy of the one, which comes from the Oracle, who, again, should have mentioned her in the first movie. They fight their way to this door by getting the keymaker from a side guy named the Merovingian, who has a bunch of stuff and a bunch of powers in the Matrix. The door is open. Neo goes in there. He meets the architect, who in my mind is just Will Ferrell anymore from the MTV Music Awards. The architect explains to Neo that the reason Neo exists is because he's like a weird part of the Matrix that keeps happening no matter what they do. And in order to fix the Matrix periodically, he has to come back to the source and re-inseminate his code. There's probably a better way to say that, disseminate, into the Matrix so that it reboots. And then he gets to choose, I want to say 7 women and 14 men, or the other way around maybe. And they start the whole fucking thing over. And they've done this 6 times, so he's the 7th one. Normally, they only just have a guy who loves everybody. And this time, they were like, you're going to love one body particularly. So he's supposed to make the altruistic choice and say, like, well, I got to save as many people as possible, so I got to reset the Matrix, and everyone else has to die, and I'll save some folks. And he goes, nah, fuck that. I'm going to go get Trinity. And then he pulls a Jesus thing and saves her life instead. And everyone's like, well, I don't know what's going to happen now. And then Smith is in charge.
I'm going to have to cut you off, Mario.
I got through 2 of 3.
In 3 minutes. So I was going to let you just finish.
No, this was a terrible failure.
It was supposed to be 3 movies in 2 minutes, and it had become 2 and 3.
2 and 3, yeah. So anyway, the good guys win, and it's a great time.
That's kind of what happens. I mean, that ending.
Everything you said happened, at least.
See, that's a great tragedy. Is my favorite part about these movies is the ending, and I didn't get to explain it.
Well, what I would say was maybe the biggest oversight of where you had described to was that you never explained what the Matrix is.
I have to show you, Paul.
Okay, that's well said. I guess we're just gonna hope that all the listeners have seen these movies, and maybe we'll flesh out some of their unanswered questions in our discussions of them. But let's start with the first one. Some background on sort of how the Matrix came to be. Producer Joel Silver had worked with the Wachowskis, who wrote Sylvester Stallone, Antonio Banderas action movie Assassins. Woo! They approached him with their script for The Matrix. He said that he would let them do it after they sort of cut their teeth on their first directorial debut, the movie Bound. When that was a commercial success, he gave them the green light. Some other cool production stuff I found was that, the Wachowskis were really about making this sort of a kung fu movie. So they hired legendary Hong Kong stunt coordinator Wu Ping Yuen, who initially refused to work on it, even though he liked the script, because he just didn't believe that they would do it right. And so he made what he thought would be the impossible demand that in order to agree to do it, the actors would have to train with him for 4 months before shooting anything.
Okay, so the practicality there, that's impossible just for production scheduling, right? Like getting Keanu Reeves, Carrie-Anne Moss, and Lawrence Fishburne to sit still for 4 months.
Yes, Hugo Weaving as well.
Yeah,
yes.
Okay, sure.
But the Wachowskis agreed. And so, for signing on to The Matrix, not only were the cast required to do what ended up being 6 months of training before filming anything, it was also required reading of each of them to read the books Simulacra and Simulation. They had to read both of those before they could even read the script, and they had to be able to explain the concepts within them.
based on only supposition. I'm pretty sure that that's another way that the Matrix warped cinema for the last 20 years is the commitment to having the talent on screen doing all of that stuff.
That after we watched it this time through, I was admiring, what they could get in around the budget. Like, obviously that movie had a huge budget, but when you look at the next two movies and you can see what they would wanted to have shot. And the first movie, they had to have like a lot more thought with a lot of more things. So it was a little tighter. But what I like about it is that even though it was borrowing, because like I didn't know any of the things it was borrowing from when I saw it, because I was 15 and living in Florida, and I had moved from Kansas, so I didn't know anything about anything at all. So The Matrix completely cracked my mind open because I had never seen these old kung fu movies or the anime stuff they're referencing and drawing from. It was all brand new to me. But what's great about it is even the people who had seen that stuff before, this movie put it together for the first time ever. Everyone who saw it saw something they'd never seen before.
Very true. And for as mind-blowing as this was for everybody who saw it, especially at that time, it's amazing to think, because the Wachowskis apparently worked on it for something like 6 years before bringing it to anybody. So how long they had sort of had that seed planted and come up with those ideas and how they wanted it to play out. They've got some brains on them.
Yeah, their work is incredible. The mind-blowing thing about The Matrix 2, by the way, is it snuck into theaters before Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. So a lot of Western audiences, I imagine, obviously like film buffs have been watching like Eastern, like wire work, kung fu and stuff like that, Jackie Chan, something like that for a long time. But like Travis said, this movie and like Crouching Tiger both hit at the same time. And it's like, look what you can do practically with people's bodies to sell this like hyper real physical stuff.
Some of the other actors considered to play some of these main roles. Neo was originally intended for Brandon Lee, but of course he died tragically making The Crow.
So now, I'm sorry to interrupt. Do you have? That's the movie I've seen Brandon Lee in. Does anyone have a deeper experience with him as to whether this would have been good, bad, or a lateral casting decision?
No idea.
It's interesting, because when you think, because I certainly, especially now, and in this rewatch of The Matrix, I really had a great appreciation for what Keanu did with the part.
Yeah.
However, for the simplicity of the part and what it required, at least from his version of it, I could see a number of iterations of that character working.
Yeah, like Keanu's, like Neo doesn't work just because Keanu is there, but like...
Yeah, the specific thing he brings to it is super interesting and cool.
Neo is just a dude, and that's all he needs to be. And I really kind of like that jumping from, even though 6 months goes by and like certain things evolve between The Matrix and The Matrix Reloaded, I like that when you get back to Neo, he's still the same one-word question asking. Yeah,
like the town elder catches him with sleep. Neither of them can sleep. And he's like, hey, did you ever think about, anything? Did I rescue the dog or did the dog rescue me? Like, do we need these machines or do the machines need us? And Neo's like, oh, what a new perspective. It's like, what do you do with your free time? Do you consider things? Or no? Yeah. Like a dog? Yeah. Neo, that makes him the perfect audience cipher. And again, this sort of screenplay where you're downloading a ton of new information the audience needs. They have Marty to explain the science to, or like The Last Starfighter where it's like all new, but you have a guy who you care about and you have to be like, look, this is why it all works. And Neo gets to be that for philosophy, basically, for these movies. And people have to be like, look, dum-dum, here's how come, you might have decision-making or you might not.
Whereas before, I always sort of had attitude to make fun of the fact that all Neo does is like go, why? What?
Right.
Who? Like he just asks questions. This time around, I thought, wow, what a patient man. You know what I mean? Like that was what I came away with, because he is willing to listen to the explanations and ask as many questions as he needs to get there.
Yeah. Can I jump in real quick with a thought that's just occurring to me? Maybe Neo is the machine's idea of like man. If you just take man without any personality, basic man that barely understands what's in front of it and needs to have other beings who with like magic names like Ghost and Morpheus to explain things to it, and then it can kind of like go punch its way through philosophy.
Yeah, like if you said Agent Smith, what are people like? He would describe someone not unlike Neo in a bad light. Yeah, but that would be like not an unfair assessment.
Okay, so then very famously, Will Smith also passed.
Which now that's the universe we want to live in, right? Like that would be a crazy universe.
I mean, it would be a different movie, I feel like. There's just no
sure.
way he could keep it so, I don't know, streamlined.
He would end up warping it around him.
Yeah, he's got too much personality.
It would be a Will Smith movie more than it was, The Matrix is kind of the star of The Matrix. But if you put Will Smith in,
it'd be interesting
Will
to
Smith's
see,
The
though.
Matrix.
I mean, I love Will Smith.
Yeah. So the next people that Wachowski wanted was Johnny Depp. The studio didn't want that. They sent them next to Brad Pitt, who upon reading the script said it was not his part to play, which I like. Very serene Brad Pitt.
Yes.
Ewan McGregor, who was filming episode 1 at the time. David Duchovny, who passed, he was doing the X-Files. Leo DiCaprio, who said he was concerned about there being too many special effects. In any case, all of those actors were considered for Keanu Reeves, but one actor who was never considered, who apparently lobbied extremely hard to be considered and was just told no, was John Cusack.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah. Which I thought could have worked. I mean, maybe Neo would have just seemed a little more tired, but the martial arts part, I guess not.
He can kick ass for sure, or he could then for sure.
That'll teach me to ever question John Cusack. I'm sorry.
Or me. My new favorite game is going to be trying to quote famous Matrix lines with John Cusack's famous throw it away tone.
I've been trying to think of it.
I know Kung Fu. I'm just going to really fast forward through the rest of these. For Morpheus, Val Kilmer, Gary Oldman, Samuel L. Jackson, Russell Crowe, and Chow Yun-Fat, all considered. For Trinity, Sandra Bullock was offered the role, but turned it down because of who was cast as Neo at the time. She didn't see them working well together. Hilarious that it ended up being Keanu Reeves. Apparently, Trinity was originally written for Janet Jackson, but she turned it down.
No.
Michelle Yeoh was considered, but had a scheduling conflict. And then, kind of fun fact there, Jada Pinkett Smith auditioned for Trinity, but didn't.
Neat.
So, we can open up the floor a little bit to Matrix discussion. Anybody, whatever anybody wants to talk about. But I do have fun facts, and then I have weird observations about each one. And so when we start getting to the pitches, I'm going to break them up with one of those, but you guys get to pick if you want a fun fact or a weird observation.
Okay. I hadn't seen it for a while, and I realized this is the first time I watched it, realizing that he only learned the word Matrix whenever Trinity, or I guess Morpheus, said it to him on his computer. The Matrix has you. I never thought about that, because I was like, how did Neo Matrix? And Travis is like, he learned about it that exact second when he heard what he couldn't put into words was called.
You mean the when he said, "What is the Matrix?" When he's prompted to the question. Yeah, okay, that is.
Neat,
I don't know that I put that together before.
It never occurred to me. I know.
I just assumed he had been deep Googling, but I guess you're right. All he has really is like
Googling.
Yeah, duck going.
I was like, how would he know the Matrix is called that? But it's because he was just told what it was called like an hour before.
I want to say that I love this movie more every time I watch it. I feel like I get something new out of it every time I watch it. I'm like blown away at the just staggering amount of thought and filmmaking.
Every department's on their shit. The set decoration is like next level good in almost all of it, especially considering how many different like worlds they're showcasing. You have the real world, which sucks, and then the Matrix, which has to look normal but also different in a distinct way, which they pull off.
I watch the special features to the Matrix about as regularly as I watch the Matrix itself. If you're at all interested in filmmaking, like as how-to or as like history of, the Matrix special features are insane.
I was really blown away in general how many more details I caught that showed just this insane commitment that they had to making this as whole and complete and rich as they could. One thing that I didn't know is that the sequence in which Neo is going through the sort of like training simulation being introduced to the Matrix, and he sees the woman in red in the crowd. Apparently numerous sets of identical twins were cast as extras in that sequence to create the illusion of a repeating program. So if you look at that crowd shot where the lady in red stands out, there's like a tall man with slick back hair and sunglasses in the opening shot. And then a few seconds later, his identical twin is a police officer writing a parking ticket.
Yeah,
so
brilliant.
Yeah,
Just the notion that, like, because I believe that is Twitch the name of the young man or Mouse? That's the one that's trying.
Yes.
And I believe Mouse is meant to be the guy that's doing all the programming because he designed the lady in red, at least. And the idea that he'd be like a lazy programmer and he would just grab assets that already existed and copy paste them makes perfect sense to me. It's such a good nod to programming in general.
Prompted by Mario incorrectly identifying Mouse as Twitch, I assume you were thinking of Switch, who originally was meant to be a man in the real world. So she would the studio wouldn't let it happen.
See, goddamn, that's brilliant.
Yeah, one of the cooler ideas that I felt like was passed on for really no reason. It's like, why not?
Like,
everybody has avatars in video games.
Exactly. Like I was saying, they went really far out of their way to like make a choice to not allow that.
The studio?
Yeah.
Right. I'm certain. Yeah. I mean, the most charitable note is just that it's confusing. But even then, it's like, no, the whole movie is confusing.
Yeah, just take a second and one sentence to explain it like they do everything else. All right, well, moving on to The Matrix Reloaded.
Reload.
The Matrix currently has an 87% on Rotten Tomatoes. The Matrix Reloaded falls down to a 73, which is not so bad. Dethroned Beverly Hills Cop for the highest grossing R-rated movie ever.
Wow.
But was beaten by Passion of the Christ within the year.
Oh, okay.
Ooh. I just think it's unfair, frankly, that some sort of Jesus analogy like ended up being unthrown by the original.
Comeback?
There can only be one.
In case anybody doesn't know, this was a trilogy, much like Back to the Future and Pirates of the Caribbean, in which the second and third chapters were released within a few months of each other. So that was a cool event. But
it felt long at the time, Paul.
It felt like an eternity.
Those two sequels don't play like two separate movies in any way.
No, you're right.
Reloaded feels abrupt and odd. The beginning of Revolutions feels kind of like you've just interrupted something. You feel a little bit awkward at first.
Mm-hmm. The ending of Reloaded, it feels like the end of a TV show episode.
Yeah.
Like a cliffhanger.
So again, it's like the Matrix forming the way film, especially in the 21st century, would look, considering now that every Marvel movie is designed to look like it's predicated on the ones before it.
Tons of other like stuff that has never really been replicated since came with the release of this sequel. A video game called Enter the Matrix was released before Reloaded, and it featured an independent plot with independently shot scenes with several of the actors that completely connects to the movie. I went ahead and watched it.
At the time.
It just kind of shows Niobe's whole side of the story that you don't get. But one of my least favorite things in Reloaded is the scene with the Merovingian and his wife, and that she wants the kiss from Neo, because it just sort of played to me as like almost like a fanboy fantasy.
Sure.
But in Enter the Matrix, Persephone does the exact same thing to Niobe and asks for a kiss. So she just wants kisses bad, not so wanting of the man as much as she is just desperate for, loving.
I think the Wachowskis are trying to express their amorous or romantic lifestyle, and I think that they're trying to side boot that into a major motion picture, and I think a lot of the audience just was like, I don't understand that, and I'm not going to engage with it. Obviously, the Merovingian and Persephone are together. They are a couple. So he's obviously always running around doing sex things, and they own like an S&M dungeon. So like clearly there's like, like an openness to their relationship, and she is finding emotional connection like she used to have with him, and that's how she's trying to hurt him.
No, I guess my problem with that whole sequence is that it's stupid. Especially in Reloaded, where it's just wasting our time. Yeah, I think I would have just taken all of that out, personally.
Everyone's going in some pretty hard directions away from how I feel.
Just to broad stroke it, I would say my take on Reloaded and Revolutions is that had it been one movie, it probably would have been pretty great. I think both suffer from being 2+ hour movies when you only really needed one. And I think that there's enough nonsense in there that doesn't give you a lot of mileage that could be taken out. And the coolest set pieces could remain with all of the major plot points, and I'm pretty happy. It definitely seems like the Wachowskis thought they had the right amount of ideas to fuel 2 movies, and I would just say that they maybe didn't.
I couldn't tell you what they're about. I found them very confusing, and I couldn't tell you beat for beat what the plot is in Reloaded or Revolutions.
I would say it's clearer in Revolutions, because Reload, it's like them just having to do a bunch of errands to get to.
It ties directly into the point of the whole thing. It's like, do people have agency over their own choices or not? It's determinism versus free will. This whole plot is errands because you think you have free will and you don't.
I would argue that what stands out about the first one versus the sequels is that it is able to take complex, mind-bending ideas and link them simply enough to a cool action movie with cool concepts. And I think that they could have done that again. Almost all that would have been cut, besides certain action sequences that seem superfluous in comparison to others. Agent Smith, I would
can just say the Burly Brawl, we know.
I would take the Burly Brawl, which is the fight with the 1,000 Agent Smiths. That's my favorite action sequence in any of the sequels. I would take that as the final battle sequence because nothing tops it. By the time you get to the Agent Smith fight at the end, I'm like, I've seen this.
Point, man.
But things that would get cut and should get cut from both of those sequels are the speeches. Both movies are constantly people giving speeches.
You can't cut that. It's the calm before the storm. It contextualizes everything that comes after. This is sort of the conversation you two are butting up against. I think you both agree. Mario just really likes all that stuff you want to cut.
I just very firmly believe that you could go through both of these movies and edit them into, Topher Grace style, a better single movie.
I disagree.
Well, we'll just have to not find out because I'm not going to do that.
No.
Well, does anyone have Topher Grace's information?
Let's make that a running thing on the show. Try to get Topher Grace. There's only a couple actors' notes here when it comes to Reloaded and Revolutions. Seraph, the Oracle's bodyguard, was originally a character written for Jet Li. However, he wanted to be paid as much as Keanu Reeves for the movies. Denied. Then it was altered to work for Michelle Yeoh, who had scheduling conflicts.
So, Paul, in your cut, would you take Seraph out for time?
No.
Okay,
no.
So you wouldn't go sans Seraph.
I wouldn't go sans Seraph. And I would also probably, and this might be controversial, I would probably not bring back Agent Smith. I would get a different big bad.
I'm bailing out. That's it. This is the last. I can't hear any more of this.
I just think that his nut was busted.
No, this is what gross. This is what Lauren talked about on our rewatch, or rather, this was the TED Talk I made Lauren listen to in the kitchen after we watched the movie. Was that
Lauren? I'm sorry.
I'm used to it.
Yeah.
When the movie showed up, it was like almost, I don't think I'm going to use this right, antithetical to what we expected. It was almost going out of his way to set up plot and then step around it and just talk about why does it matter if we have plot or not at all.
Yeah, you're right. I
So
Googled it, and that was the correct way to say antithetical.
That's why you don't want to lose any of the talking, because the talking is the whole reason why they're explaining why they're not doing the things you are expecting them to do.
There could be a great deal less talking. There was a great deal less talking in the first one, and that maybe until the architect scene that explored some of the most complex ideas of the trilogy.
Yeah.
Other casting that didn't happen, the architect, Sir Sean Connery, he
Can't say that.
he didn't get the part because he couldn't understand the concept.
Fair enough.
He was,
That's
shall be
delightful.
concordantly.
I would have failed that test too. I wouldn't have got to hang out with the cool kids at the Trinity Club. Easy.
Paul, did you
Okay.
come into any information about why they replaced Dozer, who is ostensibly alive at the end of that movie?
you mean Tank.
Tank, yeah.
Tank. Yes, and I can't wait to get into that. Okay, that was before we move on to Revolutions. Okay, so because in watching the first one again, I was sort of delighted by how charismatic Tank is. That performance is excellent, and it made me wonder why we don't see that actor anymore.
He has the mania of a zealot, and I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. He's got the chops for everything. He's got it for the cool moments. He's got it for the badass moments. He's got it for the serious moments. Apparently, he was offered $250,000 to come back for the sequels. He asked for $1 million, and they wouldn't give it to him. So he... Oh, by the way, this actor, whose name is Marcus Chong, is the adopted son of Tommy Chong.
No shit.
Yes. So he sued the Wachowskis because his contract that he signed, said that he would have to appear in the sequels. It was a rough legal battle that sort of ended up getting him blackballed in Hollywood. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess nobody really wants to work with a liability. Like, oh, if I'm mean to you, you might sue me. I'll just not cast you.
I don't know. Smells fishy. And I want you to...
It bothered me in terms of reference to Tank that they do reference Tank, but they never say what happened to him in the sequel.
That's nice ball building. It's a dangerous place. Ball.
No, I did. Well, but you know what happened to Dozer. I would I feel like the least they could have done is give us an extra sentence. If they're going to give us all these speeches...
Concurrently, you did the only thing you were meant to do, Neo. You were returned to the source. By the way, Tank died off screen.
There's a scene with a security guard. They break into the Matrix when there's a shift change. One security guard is leaving, and the other security guard is about to fall asleep. The one security guard says, "Hey, you can sleep at home." And then he says, "Why? They pay me to sleep here."
Yeah.
and then it pans down to the security footage where they've already broken in and are already walking by. So I really love how many details in a row make that guy incompetent. It's like he just started, he's falling asleep, he doesn't care about his job, and he already missed it. Like it's the worst. That security guard that I mentioned, by the way, is the director of photography for the movies, Bill Pope.
Oh, shit.
He's played. Pretty cool.
That's fun.
That was a detail that I missed before, and I thought that was very cool. Boy, there's so many. I don't even know what to bring up. I do also like that in the first one specifically, they never really pick back up, but Morpheus is concerned that Neo won't be able to recover from the shock of finding out the truth. Well, I guess Morpheus isn't, but others are, because they establish that once a mind is of a certain age, they can't come back from it. Right. So, which I thought was very, very cool. It was a factor that I hadn't really remembered about the movie, and I almost wish they would have explored it. It will be explored in my pitch.
I really liked when the councilman has that line when he says he doesn't like to sleep because I spent the first 12 years of my life sleeping. That's the only indicator really of what the general, in the movies anyway, of the general age they typically free people. It's children. They were playing Sega yesterday, and today they're in some kind of hell.
Because I imagine the machines control the breeding.
I didn't assume that there was any breeding. I assumed that everyone was just given, like they just made a human and then programmed that human to think, oh, these are your parents.
That makes sense.
So you just sort of show up and like they alter the code so that everyone remembers you already being there?
Correct. Yeah.
See, I have this whole theory about like if two avatars meet in the Matrix and copulate, then the machines have to go like, all right, well, you go get the egg, I'm gonna go collect the semen sample.
Well, then they can't control the population. They can't control anything if they're just leaving it up to us.
Yeah, I think that was my assumption anyway. I mean, I feel like with everything when it comes to the Matrix, you have to sort of like round it off to whatever would be simplest.
Sure. I don't have to think about that, but I assume it would work.
All right. Well, so then chugging right along as fast as we are so far into the Matrix Revolutions, 35% on Rotten Tomatoes, which I find to be extremely harsh. I would say that I think Revolutions works better as a film on its own than Reloaded. I do remember at the time liking 3 the least, but in watching it again, I think it is because 2 is more similar to 1.
I see what you mean.
2 was face level giving me what I wanted. It was giving me Neo, Morpheus, and Trinity acting and looking cool again and doing all the stuff again that I saw him again. And then 3 was like where everything sort of changed direction, and Neo was first comatose, and then he was blinded, and then it was like all the things that I kept thinking I wanted were all sort of like changed and taken away.
I think it was just a situation where people thought maybe the third one would turn the franchise back into something a little bit more recognizable and chewy, that the way we all expected this to go. And as soon as word was out that it does not do that, it's more whatever the second one was. It's more of that. People went, okay.
Philosophical. Yeah. Another unprecedented and unreplicated thing that the release of this movie did is Revolutions had a simultaneous global release.
Oh, wow.
The film happened at the exact same moment in every major city in the world, which meant 6 a.m. in Los Angeles, 9 a.m. in New York, 2 in London, 5 in Moscow, 11 p.m. in Tokyo, 1 a.m. in Sydney, which I think is super cool.
It and all 3 movies, and largely the Wachowski filmography, maybe not all, but largely, will be remembered, I think, much more favorably than it's looked on today.
But they don't. But certainly, I think that what can be taken away is that the Wachowskis are not necessarily interested in making the digestible or the
right, which I think we need more of. I really hope Matrix 4 ends up being more of that, and we don't just get like, oh, you guys hated the last ones. Here's this.
Paul, I have a question about the Matrix 4. What do any of you suspect the plot of this sequel might be, or should be?
I don't want to spend the time trying to guess how they will blow my mind this time, and I'm just going to hope that they do it.
Yeah.
Once it comes out, I'm sure I'm going to have a very loud opinion on whether it was good or bad and where the good points were and where the bad points were. Well, classic most people, I think. But I would say that in other franchises, I might take a shot, like Ghostbusters or something like that. But when it comes to The Matrix, it's not my purview. These are not the kind of things that I wondered about before the first Matrix showed them to me. And so I feel that I'm not almost worthy.
The reason I will go to the bat for the Matrix sequels forever is that the Wachowskis came up with a compelling and interesting and thematic way to change the nature of the conflict between human and machines away from, I'm going to murder you and you don't want me to a Cold War where now the two powers have some semblance of balance with each other, which to me is infinitely more compelling than what I think most people assumed would happen, was that Zion would somehow figure out a way to kill all of the machines, clean the sky up, and plant gardens like it's the end of the Wall-E credits.
And the Matrix still exists, so there are still those who will be plugged in, and there will those who will be freed. I like it on paper a lot, and it also makes me optimistic for 4. I really enjoyed it from Revolutions. Sorry, so they get to, I don't remember what the fight is, but I know it's like they get on an elevator and they don't know how many guards there's going to be, but there's like a guy at the counter and there's a bunch of guns behind him.
The more avenging,
do you remember that?
Right? And then they jump to the ceiling.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, right. So they're fighting the people that are on the ceiling. They're shooting at each other.
Yeah.
So what I really enjoyed in that scene is that you get this shot of one of those upside down guys doing a bunch of flips, which we've seen all of our Matrix good guys do a million times. And every time they do flips, all the bullets miss.
Yeah.
But with that guy, you get to see him flip a little bit, and then he just gets riddled with bullets.
Yes, I love that shot so much.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that because I was like, okay, good. They are showing that it doesn't work every time.
Way to put in the effort, bud, but I have bad news. Like,
yeah.
See, I don't love that action sequence.
No, I think that's the worst action sequence in the series.
No, I mean, I don't either. I'm just saying.
Well, it just it feels like a studio note. They were like, you remember when you shot Hallway Pillars and everyone loved it? What if that again? And then they were like, well, what do you mean with that again? We did that. And they were like, okay, but like, I don't know, fix it. And they were like, fuck, I guess they could jump on the ceiling? Because it just feels so not interesting and not integral to the plot.
Yeah.
With the exception of the multiple Agent Smith fight in 2, I would say that is, I like a lot of the action sequences, but I would say that the problem with most of them in 2 and 3, and not including the ones that take place in the real world, But the ones that take place in the Matrix are just sort of like an insert action sequence here type of thing. And the emphasis seems to be on new types of bad guys instead of agents, or instead of what we saw in the first one. It's like, oh, who's our new bad guy for this scene? And it's really unsatisfying in a lot of instances. It's like, specifically, I keep thinking of the twins, who are really cool and who have a cool ability that is used well to some extent. And then when they die, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Like,
see, I would read that they don't end up dead. They just like end the fight there, though. Like if the movie wanted, they could just like recover from that large explosion. And I guess my assumption is that
they would, but then they don't.
Yeah, right. Because like the movie's done with that fight. I see what you mean. Like that's a lot of the movie. I also have a lot of beef while we're on the topic of like the elasticity of threat level. Like, you know, Neo in the first one goes to a place where he is literally no longer threatened by anything in the Matrix. He is literally one-handed, super special effect, blocking all the blows, and can just destroy agents. And the second one, because they have to have fights, they throw the line upgrades. Great. Oh, I'm fine with that. But Trinity already, or who was it? Whomever it was that explained to Neo, if you see an agent, run. I think it's Trinity says it. If you see an agent, do what we do and run. Now in the second one, the agents are upgraded enough that they can put up with Neo, and Morpheus still spends the biggest action sequence in Act 2 of that movie toe-to-toe with an agent. And I recognize it's still at a disadvantage, but like, again, it's a super elasticity of like, how strong are they supposed to be? What's threatening to who in these movies? Because again,
I totally get what you're saying, but I mean, like when you get into questions like that, then you get into like, well, why aren't more cops turning into agents constantly? You know what I mean? Like if the anomalies are anywhere in the Matrix, why aren't agents just swarming them? You know,
yeah, you're right. You know what? I'm off of it. Let's not pitch movie sequels.
Anyone has any ideas for how they could solve these problems in future movies?
Is that you?
I thought it was all of us. What are we doing here?
Okay, you're right. And that is that, you know what? I'm going to take it this time, Travis.
All right.
And I'm going to say great transition.
Floppy.
And at the same time, I am going to do a real quick aside just to mention, because I always mention all the weird unofficial sequels that exist. There is another video game called The Matrix Online that continues the story from Matrix Revolutions. It doesn't exist anymore, the game, but it was a game that sort of that pushed the storyline further only in what things would happen in the Matrix.
Didn't you play that, Mario?
I never did. I have spent more time on the wiki than you would believe. And they did some really compelling stuff. They had players enter the players, like, employees of the company that ran it would enter the game. And like, if you were in the right place at the right time, Morpheus would show up and say things, and they would be canonical things that would matter later in the story of that game. They were trying to do some cool stuff. It's a shame that didn't go over better because, man,
I think it was just, the Wachowskis' ambition has always been ahead of reality. I just think that at the time, that was not the time to do the game they wanted. I think that time was probably like, I don't know, 5 years later. I don't know anything about MMOs.
Well, and I guess, MMOs aside, like when you're looking at something like Enter the Matrix, it is a very cool example of a video game based on a movie because it is a video game tied into not only a movie, but a separately released animated short film movie.
Yeah.
Which is like so cool in so many ways, but video game movies just don't get the time and money, I guess. Like, I guess the ambition is just like, oh, we want it to be this cool. And then they go, yeah, we'll do what we can.
Yeah.
Right. Moving past all of that very interesting stuff into the questions so we can finally, get out of here one day. Should this movie, The Matrix, have a sequel?
Yes.
1,000%. It's annoying to me that it's taken this long.
Well, it does.
What
do you mean?
And an Animatrix, so you've gotten a lot of sequels.
With the exception of the Animatrix, I'm going to say no.
Oh. That's gone the other way entirely.
I mean, yes, I do want to see how the one breaks the Matrix, but I don't know that it could ever be satisfying.
Live up to your expectations.
Yeah, and I don't know that it's necessary in terms of giving the first one its props, because it is so ahead of the game in so many ways and so cool that I think the coolest note that it could possibly end on is that one. And then if you have the Animatrix there to give you those bits of backstory and like the further explore the other ideas, I don't know that you need more.
I'm changing my
Personally.
answer. I agree.
So I'm sorry, Mario. I didn't. When I invited you here,
No, I mean,
embarrassed.
I'll find a way to forgive you eventually, but it's going to take.
No, don't bother. Why would you? No.
We have a 50-50 split. And then the next question that precedes the pitches, sequel or prequel? What's the sweet spot? I've already said I think the Animatrix rules, and so I would say prequel rules, which is maybe the first time I've said that.
Yeah, true. I would say rich enough territory for either. Mine personally is going to be a prequel, but if I was going to take an actual swing for real, I think sequel is the way to go.
I think that The Matrix is just as rich in terms of content where you could go as Star Wars has ever been, honestly. But in terms of like what stories could you tell, I can't think of an endpoint, honestly. It's so wide. You go back, prequels, sequels.
Well, this is why you're here.
Yeah,
Because
right.
Well, you're right. Well, and that's why that's why I can't give enough credit to the Animatrix. It's like, because I could take stories like that all day that branch off of just concepts from, the idea of the Matrix.
You're going to love my...
But do I need to continue the main story and sort of see how that shakes out? That's pretty low on my list.
I would agree with you. I think Neo's story is flat done. What else could you wring out of the one guy who did his thing already?
What's left to see is him breaking the Matrix, essentially. But
But even then, he was never meant to free all the machines. That was a lie that the machines told us.
We only know that
Yeah, but that's-
made a sequel. Tuna
yeah, that's according to the trilogy, not to the first
Oh,
one.
I'm sorry. I get it. We're not saying does the Matrix trilogy deserve a sequel. We're saying does The Matrix 1999 deserve a sequel?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, should not deserve. Probably yes, because absolutely it deserves as many sequels as it wants because it was so cool. Should it have one? Is the question.
story. So does your heart tell you?
Here's a controversial opinion. No. From
Well,
me,
that's
Everyone's opinion except mine so far,
so
Mark.
Travis.
I just thought it'd be controversial if I said it because I'm supposed to be the guy who thinks make
No, you're right.
Matrix forever. But yeah.
Oh, okay, Lauren says yes.
Certified.
Wait, Lawrence, back to yes.
no.
No, I agree that Mario's opinion is controversial considering how much he loves the sequels.
Yeah.
Yeah. Agreed. Based on the things I liked absolutely the most in the first Matrix, which probably as cool as all the fighting and all the stuff is in it, the stuff I like the most is the first act in which he's brought in and the concept is initially given and they plant the bug in him and they like how scary and crazy that is to be with him on that part of the ride is probably my favorite part of the ride. And so I think maybe the best way to watch the Matrix get broken by the one would be through someone else's perspective.
Interesting.
I was going to request to go first. I have intentionally kept my pitch short and light, anticipating lengthy pitches from Mario.
Okay.
Considering how long we've already been talking, I am already a hero for this short pitch. So if no objections, I'll go first.
Go for it.
Great. Glad to have everyone's attention.
Let me tell you what I believe.
You won't know this is a Matrix film going in. Kind of like how Split was a sneak sequel to Unbreakable. You will assume this is a movie about whatever, and then blah, blah, The Matrix. So it's called Model. It's about a group of somewhere between paranormal investigators and actual scientists. An artistic conclave of lateral thinking scientists have all come together because they have this house in the middle of town that's been there. It's a very, very old house. Inside that house is a model of the house. And no one knows where it came from. It's just always been there. So they have come into possession of this real estate and they're tinkering. Anything you do in the model of the house happens in the house proper. And they can't figure out why. And so then as you go through the movie, they're guessing like, is it supernatural? Is it ghosts? Is it this? Is it that? At no point will you think, it's a computer simulation that you're in. whatever. It'll be Mr. X all over the place, and it will end with them figuring it out, only to wake up, in those Matrix pods that everyone sees, and you're supposed to go, oh, Matrix movie. Now, the only way to make that not just a gimmicky, obnoxious ending is I think you have to kind of make it a dark comedy so that when they wake up in the Matrix, you can kind of play it for like, well, now look at what you've gotten us into, sort of moment.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, I can tell.
And short.
Yep.
No.
Critics
I think it was just shorter even than anticipated.
Cool. So the only not short enough.
Lauren, do you have a pitch also?
I do, and it is also a prequel.
Okay, rad. Damn, a lot of prequels. Okay, cool. Okay, well, who wants to go next?
Can I go next?
Yes.
I'm nervous.
Yes.
Okay.
Remember?
Well, you won the last one. You're coming in hot.
Oh, yeah, it's true. All right, so elevator pitch.
Wow, that sounds like a really good deal. But I think I got a better one.
Beatrice is the second iteration of the one. It's 1850 Wild West America, 50 people in the town, one Marshall Smith. Only electricity is a telegraph machine in the Marshall's office. So, i.e., there's no way for people outside the Matrix to contact anyone in the Matrix. All right, so the first scene is night, cowboy town. There's the lightning storm starting. We see Beatrice dragging a thick pole out into the desert outside her home. There's already a hole dug for the hole. She puts the pole in the hole and stands clutching it. Lightning strikes closer and closer to where she's standing, but not hitting the pole. Closer and closer until we can see the lightning in her eyes. The hair on her arm stands on end. We cut to title card. The Matrix. Retrogression.
Ooh, neat.
We follow Beatrice in her everyday life. She's walking through the town. They have like wrestling / fighting as a sport in the town. And she has noticed a man named Judd who is like very good at it. She approaches him and asks if he can teach her some self-defense because she knows none. And he does. Oh, so then we see her once again outside trying to, like, there's another lightning storm. She has the pole out. She's trying. Whenever she notices that off in the distance, she notices the marshal and the town drunk, like, sort of facing off. And, like, town drunk's, like, saying whatever, like, hassling him. And tries to attack him. And the marshal, with wicked speed, shoots him. And the town drunk turns into light and disappears. Much to Beatrice's horror, of course. So the next day she's in town and she sees the marshal escorting the town drunk into jail. So she's like, that's weird. Because he disappeared into light. So she goes to investigate, goes to the marshal's office, asks if she can talk to the town drunk. The marshal says no. He leaves the room for a time, allowing a telegraph to come through. Beatrice recognizes the Morse code and only doesn't recognize one word she hears, Matrix. She finds all of this very odd. She goes to talk to Judd, the man who helped her learn how to fight. He said that he has also noticed weird stuff in the town. And Beatrice confides in him about a childhood thing that happened to her where she was swimming in a lake and it got struck by lightning. And for the briefest second, she saw something she could not account for, the real world. And ever since then, she's been trying to replicate that instance to get another glimpse of what she saw but could not account for. 4 bandits have beef with the sheriff. They face off with him, High Noon style. He kills them all with impossible speed. The whole town sees this. Some of them think that it's weird. Beatrice secretly confides in all of them and is like, hey man, don't you guys think this is kind of weird? They agree. Bringing us to the final showdown between Beatrice and Marshall Smith. It's again High Noon style. Another storm is brewing. Beatrice tries to fight the Marshal with her, meager self-defense stuff, but she tries, but it's too much. I mean, it's not enough to beat the Marshal. While all this time the storm is brewing, hotter and hotter, and Beatrice gets struck by lightning. But instead of dying, it envelops her body and courses through her, and she realizes she can control it. Marshall Smith is like, he can't account for this. So in his moment of hesitation and shock, she grabs him and holds onto him as tight as she can. They are both enveloped in the lightning. Marshall Smith screams. They both envelop more and more until they're just pure beings of light. And all of a sudden, poof, we are with Beatrice in her pod in the real world. She wakes up, she pulls out her breathing apparatus and looks around in horror. She notices that in the towers of pods around here, the lights are going off, one by one, tower closer and closer to her. And as darkness reaches her, the screen goes dark. We pull out. The screen is one of many on the Architect's Council. We see the architect in his chair, obviously pondering his failed scenario. He turns, and Marshall Smith is standing next to him. Architect regards him, taps his pen, and Marshall turns into Agent Smith. The architect then nods to himself, and we have credits.
Cool.
Great. It's a failed Matrix. Like the program doesn't work, and that's why the pods are all going off.
Right. The second of the 7 iterations of the one.
Love it.
Well, both so far, you and Travis's, I think your guys' films translate best as short films, like Animatrix style,
Right.
Matrix chapters.
Yeah.
Now, Travis's, I think, could work independently of the sequels. Yours is dependent on the concept of the architect.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
A prequel to the trilogy, whereas mine fits in anywhere around just the first movie. Mine doesn't need the sequels. Yours does, though.
These would work really nicely in sort of the Animatrix 2000.
Yeah, give me that. I want that.
Yeah.
I will go next. I'm going to keep the prequel thing going, but I have bad news. I'm sorry. I forgot that I was only supposed to focus on The Matrix. So these are both.
Both include the trilogy.
Yeah.
That's fine.
I really love those sequels.
All right, well, let's do your prequel, and then I'll do my sequel, and then we'll end on your sequel.
Sounds good.
Does that sound okay?
Let me tell you why you're here.
My prequel would be called The Penultimate Matrix. It would go a little something.
Ugly.
Thank you.
I hate the way it looks in my mind.
I hate it. It would go a little something like this. So the whole pitch is the 6th one instead of the 2nd or the 7th, which was Keanu. It's very familiar. A lot of, it's like the way Lucas likes it when it rhymes. The one is awoken and gains agency over his powers and destroys a version of Smith and everything, and that's all kind of like Act 1-ish stuff. The Neo-Trinity relationship, though, is very notably a casual thing. It's more like office flirty. They obviously have chemistry. They're obviously into each other, but it's not like definitely cruising for like, I'm going to be in love with you forever. And then additionally, the philosophy leans real hard into determinism versus free will, like right away. Like, do you make choices because you can, or do you make choices because you have to? And then Smith and Neo talk about that a lot more. And Smith is really writing Neo about how you don't have any choices. You think you do. And of course, Neo's like, yes, I do. I have free will all the time. I think that's
Right.
Does Paul have a question?
Yeah, this is a prequel?
Yes. This is the 6th.
Oh, okay, got it.
Which is why
a
it's the
prequel
penultimate
where
Matrix.
The second movie is required viewing for the prequel. Got it.
It's
Okay, that's fine.
prequel to the trilogy. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We're somewhere in the, like, still Act 1, Act 2-ish. It's a lot of, like, the audience is like, yeah, I've seen this before. It's all very familiar, except, like, obviously the actors are different.
Yeah.
So, somewhere at the end of Act 2, Neo does the Destroy Smith thing. But there's a conversation specifically about Neo telling Smith, like, I'm not going to destroy you. I'm going to send you back to the source, but I'm going to get you out of my hair because I'm making a choice right now not to kill you. And Smith will say something like, oh, you're going to pay for this. Maybe not now, but one day. And then Smith is gone. Act 3 would start, and it would basically be like The Matrix Reloaded, except that this time when Neo gets to the architect, he realizes that he's clear, like, the whole theme of the movie is like, Neo's like, yeah, I make choices. It's not predetermined, he gets there, and then it'd be written well, so the audience would get the emotional feeling of hoping and rooting for 6, but knowing the whole time that he definitely will have to reboot the Matrix and kill everyone in Zion. So he makes a deal with the architect, and he says, I'll do this thing for sure, but you got to sweeten the pot for me just a little bit. I want me and I want my Trinity to survive the reboot. And the architect is like, that literally cost me nothing. Fine, get the thing done and we'll move on with it. And he goes, okay, great. So he goes back in and he dooms everyone in Zion at the time and everyone in the Matrix and picks his 14 and 7 and they reboot. So he does it
because he chose to reboot their specific love that does lead to the victory.
What I did instead was he goes to the source and instead of being destroyed, he finds himself and Trin alive again. they are slightly changed now because it's a new Matrix, and it is here that we, the audience, realize that they looked eerily familiar the whole time because the Merovingian and Persephone are now setting out to create the world they want for themselves in this, the seventh Matrix. So that's my less good than Travis's thing.
Sorry.
Yes, it's good too.
I'm so sorry.
So the sixth the one is the Merovingian.
Yeah, I always like the idea that the Merovingian.
That was your headcanon.
Yeah, he's not just a program. He's a previous Neo who did what he was supposed to. And that's why he's so, like, there is no free will, motherfucker. You will do what everyone tells you because he tragically believed the opposite, and it was ground out of him by the system that he chose to become a part of in his failing. Because that, to me, at least makes it sensible that it is a prequel. Because, like, that story's not important, but it would be emotionally compelling. And I like the idea that it at least sets up somewhat why Smith is able to just show back up with free will in returns. Or Reloaded.
Okay, yeah, that's cool. Your pitch made me realize I do have an overarching plot question about the trilogy.
Okay, shoot.
Smith is a program that grows too powerful for the Matrix to handle, and that is why they make the accord with Neo.
Yes.
That happened every time before this? This is the first time that happened.
Maybe that would have happened every time. We don't know because we always reset the Matrix.
Yeah, immediately after that, everything exploded and we started over again. Yeah.
But the re-entry of Smith happens before that.
Right, but
it's just you're
not much
that problem never got out of hand.
Right, exactly. So you would never have had to make the deal because the equation never got that far.
Okay, got it. This is going to be a really weird transition after all of those pitches because mine is a pitch that I made after watching the first one before watching any of the others, just trying to put myself in a mindset of like, oh, if I had just seen this first one, what would I want to see happen next? And also on some level trying not to use anything from the sequels that I remember.
I'm so sorry it didn't occur to me that was the assignment because that is such a more compelling assignment. I should have done that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm not as disappointed in you as Travis because he knows what the show is, but
that tracks.
Oh well. No, I mean, but at the same time,
get it together.
Mine's going to be too long and annoying and shit. So like, it's going to be weird. Let's see how this edits together.
Buckle your seatbelt, Dorothy, because Kansas is going bye-bye.
A badass human female hacker who goes by the codename Rose with a Z, so R-O-Z-E, works for the agents of the Matrix and does everything in her long list of abilities, some of which mirror Neo's own, to find the likes of the international terrorists Neo, Morpheus, and Trinity.
He can't see you, Mario.
Oh, shit. I have my hand up.
Oh, sorry, you have a question already.
Yeah.
Okay, jeez. What happened?
How do we know how Rose is spelled?
Oh, because you see it, it's her hacker name.
Oh, okay.
So it's like
text somewhere. Okay, great.
There's no twist that reveals it, just like there's no twist that reveals Neo means 1, but Rose means 0.
Oh,
yes.
That's clever. Oh, that's you genius. Great.
So she works for the agents of the Matrix, in the Matrix. She does everything to try to track down Neo, Morpheus, and Trinity and co. But when she witnesses her hacker boyfriend, who goes by the alias Cinnabot, being willingly taken by these enemies, she decides to change up her approach and seeks out the Nebuchadnezzar crew independently of the agents in her own time. Upon eventually meeting them and taking the red pill, Rose has a mental breakdown and goes into like a comatose state of shock. Morpheus doubts that she'll survive, but Neo seems almost eerily optimistic. The next morning, she's totally fine. Trinity doesn't trust this, and she also questions why Neo didn't find Rose himself, because, I'll get into that in a second, but so Morpheus sends Trinity to visit the Oracle where she lives in the real world to get some answers. So in my version, the Oracle is not a program, she is a person.
Okay.
Plugs into the Matrix.
I dig it.
So it turns out that Cinnabot was one of several key players found by Neo across the world in the Matrix for the assembly of a team put together for one mission, hacking the Matrix. In this way, the film becomes a heist movie. Elements of the heist include breaking into a central source code locale, and another involves hacking into an agent which involves a comedic scene that has Cinnabot trying to hide his human personality in the form of an agent.
Okay.
So the end goal of the heist is to free all humans at once, cutting off the machine's power source while simultaneously launching a last stand type of attack with the forces of Zion.
Wow.
Some things have evolved thanks to Neo. For instance, he, Morpheus, and Trinity no longer need landlines to leave the program. They can just wake themselves up.
Oh.
Early on in the heist action, so Rose, who has regained consciousness, proves her worth by saving Neo's life by helping him escape after he struggles to face some agents or something like that. She saves his life, and this puts Morpheus's suspicions to rest. However, when Trinity arrives to speak to the Oracle, whom she is surprised to find out is a Weasley man in the real world, so I'm then taking the switch thing, plugging it in there. And he created the Oracle as sort of a more palatable version of what his abilities allow him to do. Trinity is warned of an inverse of Neo, essentially Zion's Antichrist.
Ooh.
Sentinels arrive from nowhere, and a battle ensues. The Oracle pulls off some cool tricks to defend herself, but is ultimately killed, her/himself. Trinity makes her last stand against the Sentinels, but we don't see what happens.
Trinity.
We go back to the heist. The heist goes off without a hitch, as does the battle that comes after, and humankind is freed of the Matrix. But something isn't right. Neo keeps having memories of a woman he once knew that's never existed named Trinity. Eventually, he realizes the truth and immediately tells Morpheus, "This isn't real. Wake up."
Ooh.
Neo makes himself wake up to find that he's still somewhere in the Matrix and he's facing what looks like a sea of agents.
You never left the holodeck.
So here, Neo, I'm essentially taking the Agent Smith battle, the 1,000 Agent Smith battle, and making it Neo's sort of ultimate standoff against the Matrix. Except for it's not Smith, it's just agents in general.
Okay.
Morpheus, meanwhile, wakes up on the Nebuchadnezzar, where we see that the rest of the heist crew are still tapped into the Matrix. Rose is flying the ship towards Zion with an army of sentinels bringing up the rear. Morpheus pretends to be asleep while Rose wakes up Cinnabot and reveals her plan. He tries to talk her out of it, and she kills him, saying, "I'll just make another one of you." Rose goes on to unplug the whole heist crew, except for Neo, but is stopped before she gets to Morpheus by the arrival of Trinity. Trinity, Morpheus reveals that he's awake. She insists that he leave to warn Zion of what's coming, while she holds off Rose. And so he escapes in like a pod and flies ahead to Zion. So Neo is fighting the agents. He's making quick work of them individually, but their sheer numbers are starting to overwhelm him. Rose is more powerful than Trinity, because I'm thinking, I don't know how this would be revealed, but the backstory is that she is a like hybrid daughter of Agent Smith, where she's part machine, part human.
Okay.
And that has been what allows her to reach the real world. So she's fighting Trinity while Neo's fighting the agents. And then separately, Morpheus is leading the armies of Zion into their last stand against the machines. Basically, it all comes down to Neo. He's thought to be lost beneath the sheer weight of all the agents, but instead he goes into sort of Neo code mode and finds that, like everything in the Matrix, for him, the agents are malleable. So he swims through them, shredding them to pieces with his swimming strokes first, and then he begins drinking them.
Oh.
Then everything basically seems hopeless for the humans against the machines, but once Neo has essentially supped upon the code of the agents, he's now standing alone in the room. He now has the code within himself and is in control of the Matrix himself. He travels through the code into each Sentinel and other enemy robot until they're all sort of neutralized at once. This includes half of Rose, who's sort of half machine.
Half of her that's machine.
Which allows Trinity the advantage to turn the tables and mop the floor with her.
Okay, that's cool.
So Neo escapes the Matrix, blasting the plug out of his own head or something, and reunites with Trinity. thanking her for being responsible for saving all of humankind, because if he hadn't loved her so much that he remembered her, he might still be stuck in the Matrix within the Matrix. The survivors start rebuilding society. Morpheus sort of steps into like an unexpected role as like a new oracle of sorts. And the story ends with him and Neo waxing philosophical about the subject of the Antichrist, with Morpheus asking, how can we ever know which was which? Perhaps hers was the true path all along. To which Neo responds, whatever side we're on, we earned our shot. And I call this Hack the Matrix.
Right. There are definitely parts of that I'm a big fan of. This does feel more, I want to use the phrase palatable for the audience, considering the trilogy we actually got, which I suppose in that scenario, it's a very good pitch.
Yeah, as I said, I don't consider myself as smart as or forward-thinking as the Wachowskis, and I appreciated the questions that they gave us with their sequels. It's a stupider movie, for sure.
Well, I mean, I did write down one question during your pitch. If you don't mind, I just want to bounce this off of you.
Please.
I just wrote drinking ? And underlined it thrice.
Yeah, I think it was more a matter of not having a full idea for that moment, because in the first one and basically in the third one, Neo is inside of Agent Smith and shatters him from within.
Sure, which is
so. I was trying to sort of think of what a different like how to get the code inside of Neo specifically, and what could look different. Like it's more of one of those things.
You could like absorb him.
Yeah,
Maybe.
that's what I would say. He just starts like grabbing them and then like sucking them in, like digitizing them and absorbing them. Yeah, which is like a form of drinking. That's how plants.
Yeah, I mean, I guess more about it in the sense of like there's that, I don't remember, 7 brothers or something. There's like I don't remember what it is, but it's I think it's it's a group of Chinese brothers, and I know one of them drinks the sea.
Yes, they each have special abilities, and they're twins. So the whole gimmick is the one drinks the sea, and everyone's super pissed at him, so they're going to punish him. So each brother shows up for each punishment and uses their superpower to like defeat punishment. I believe like one's invulnerable to fire and stuff.
Like it's actually called 5 Wonderful Superhero Friends. I have the book right here. Retold.
There's no way that's what it's actually called.
Yi Hong, I think is how it's pronounced.
Are you kidding? That's the actual book?
Wonderfully illustrated. Yeah.
Wow.
My mind is blown.
Let me see. Hang on.
Wow.
See, here's a guy doing what you described, digging with his hands.
And this is good for a podcast, Travis. Show us more pictures.
Oh, yeah. Some of the best podcasts are describing picture books vaguely.
But yes, I totally, something should be better there. That's where I'll leave that.
I'm sorry. I just gently ribbing you. I like the idea that like Neo begins to like literally, what's the word I'm looking for? Internalize Matrix code, and by reaching a critical level of Matrix code, he is then able to understand the totality of the Matrix. Yeah, crap thunder, basically. Like that's what unlocks his ability to like transcend even further to the point where he is God now and can like break the Matrix.
Well, and also what I like about that is if it weren't for the Matrix itself wanting to defeat him, they probably would have been okay. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, it's oversimplified, but I kind of think that the first one is oversimplified in comparison.
No, I see. I mean, I think you definitely meet your goal of like, if you're trying to make a pitch to the Matrix that is engaging in the level that the Matrix is, this is a movie that feels much more straightforward. Like, yeah, that's how you would solve the actual beat up the Matrix problem. Because, I guess, what you do elegantly is raise and clarify the stakes. So it is a final showdown.
It's sort of like one of those things where it's like just compacting everything makes the movie seem fun. Like, for example, I was wondering this time around watching the first one, Cypher makes this deal with the agents to screw everybody over and blah, 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 blah. But he's been in there for 5 years waiting for the one. The one shows up. And then a couple days into knowing the guy, he's like, okay, well, now is when I'm going to
betray everyone,
jump ship and betray everybody and decide to totally stop believing.
It seems like he already had one foot off the ship,
I mean, for sure. But at the same time, it's like, why wouldn't you give it a couple more days when it's like, finally found
if you wanted to just like, if, check the movie's math, you could argue that like maybe he didn't have the option to do this until maybe the agent reached out to him just now, and they're like, "This is the deal, take it, or I guess we'll just kill you."
Right, because now it's serious enough that they are willing to, or whatever.
Yeah, you know what? Actually, I would argue because they want access to the Zion mainframe specifically from Cypher, so I would argue that once the one does show up, that's the end game for that Matrix.
I think you have to look at it less literally than that. You have to like look at the story that they're trying to tell, and then you have to kind of go like, well, at this point in the story, we're talking about this versus that and free will versus humanity. We need the betrayal of the whatever, because they're drawing from 1,000 different sources. I assume it's all structured very particularly, so you kind of have to go, this is just the time at which this happens.
Right. It's coincidence, but it's not that big of an accident. Yeah.
Right.
I buy that.
Well, I don't have a big problem with it, but I'm saying that's movie logic in general.
Right.
So, like, compacted tends to be the best way to tell a story.
Well, and I mean, I'm a big fan of the idea that, like, if you're telling a story well, like J.J. Abrams, as much as I don't love a lot of what he does, he usually manages to use craft so well that you don't realize you have a bunch of problems with the movie until you're, like, in the car on the way home.
Right.
And movies get away with that when they're constructed well. You don't go, hey, wait a minute, that's a weird coincidence. You just go, that movie's awesome. They blew up that guy and did Kung Fu. So.
They did blow up that guy. I remember that.
Usually with even the most perfect movies, you can say, yeah, it has a couple plot holes, but it's so gosh dang good.
Right, because it's an emotional experience as much as it is an intellectual one. And that's why I think Steven Spielberg is one of the greatest directors of all time, because he's a master of like, don't look at that, keep paying attention. But yeah.
Okay, so we got to hear this last pitch, and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay.
This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back.
It's been about a decade since Neo did his thing, and we find ourselves clearly inside the Matrix at the beginning of the movie, and a group very similar to the crew we're used to of 4 or 5 cool leather-wearing sunglasses people doing something neat they're running an op to free just some large group of people and tell them, hey, you're in the Matrix. If you choose to, you can leave. They run afoul of agents, and just as they're about to break out into the usual badass fighting, we cut back to the real world and their operator, our heroine, who's on one of their ships, but it's like a clean, built-on-purpose ship, more like a 747 than the rusty old bucket that Nebuchadnezzar was. There's a bizarre surge in her Matrix screen code, and then all of a sudden, all 3 of her screens begin blinking one line of Matrix text. All of a sudden, we hear 5 flatline noises, and she spins around to the people in their jack-in chairs, and they are all dead. So it turns out that this decade of humans leaving the Matrix by their own free will, which was sort of the agreement that was made with the Cold War between the machines and the humans, that's been really taxing the machines because, again, we are their batteries. So they're having to cut way back on stuff to get by. Now, there's some random thing that happens where an explosion destroys a huge swath of their energy farms, and they're even more impacted than they were before. In cool fight scenes now, periodically, whenever they're doing Matrixy stuff and they're really pushing the Matrix, you start to get artifice, frame rate drops and pixelation. And I said basically the Rick and Morty episode. So anyway, this catastrophic explosion destroyed a big portion of their pod towers. And in Zion, a metallic being with no head shows up. And when the Council of Elders reveal themselves, we're reintroduced to Trinity, Morpheus, Locke, and Niobe. The headless robot manifests its head, the baby head from Revolutions, but it's made out of a little cloud of nanites, so it's got the cheeks. And it sort of entreats Zion to aid. The machines have realized that they can only survive now with the cooperation of the freed people of Zion. So we're starting into Act 2. There's a big initiative, this new complex that was built between the machines and Zion. And it's you go there and you voluntarily jack into the Matrix for 8 hours. It's you go to work, but your work is to be comfortable in the Matrix.
Yeah.
You voluntarily produce power for them for 8 hours and then you get out. But the grand opening ribbon cutting, the whole fucking thing just explodes and all the people that were there and all the machine bodies die. A crew is assembled, including the operator we met from the beginning of the movie, and they're going to go figure out what in the fuck. So now we have kind of a detective story in and out of the Matrix as they're trying to track down what the fuck is going on. Morpheus is I don't want her to go with. And then she's you can't tell me what to do, Dad. So it turns out that our heroine is Morpheus's daughter, of course, because I am just that hack. They do detective work and they eventually discover the climax of Act 3 that Morpheus has secretly taken it upon himself to destroy the machines once and for all, despite the will of the human beings deciding to aid. And he's no, fuck that. Morpheus has been oppressed by machines his entire life. He's not going to make a peace deal with them. He wants to kill them all. So he's the bad guy, it turns out. Anywho, there's a big confrontation where Morpheus and his daughter have to fight. It's now we're in the Matrix again, and he's there, and it's a de-aged special effects Larry Fishburne. And, she finally beats him and he's like, it's too late. There's nothing you can do about it. I'm going to wipe out the machines, da-da-da-da-da-da. And then she reaches out in a moment of like clarity and she sees Matrix code just like Neo did, but not in the exact same way. It's faint. It's like mostly the real world with just a little bit of code everywhere. And she reaches into Morpheus and does something. We don't see what. He disappears and she passes out. And when she comes to, she's in the room full of monitors with the architect. And he explains to her that in order to prevent Neo from showing back up again in so many hundred years, he just disseminated that code individually to every human being still jacked into the Matrix. So every human being in the Matrix has some little bit of Neo in them now. But he spent the last decade keeping that a secret so people didn't just develop superpowers and fight all over the place. But now that there is a peace agreement between humans in the Matrix and the machines, he can just let that be public knowledge. He also explains that she didn't kill her dad. She just deleted the code in the mainframe of the Matrix that let him interact with it. So now the most he can ever do is jack into the programs that they control, like the program loading room with the we need guns, lots of them. But he's cut off from the Matrix forever. Didn't you see the Matrix again? But like now, instead of it looking like the end of 21st century America, it is literally the most science fiction-y, inconceivable thing you can imagine. Buildings floating and people moving between different planes of orientation and the imagination unbound, because it is a completely virtual world that doesn't have to represent anything. And there is like people and there are like these beings that can literally, again, be any kind of configuration of shape, and they all have like subtle matrix code running through them because these are now the programs, unfettered by the need to look like people at all. And they finally have found coexistence. And then I threw in this bit just because I don't know. A little Indian girl turns to her mom, a middle-aged Indian woman, both of whom have the matrix code sheen, and she says, Mom, do you think Neo would like this? The woman turns to the camera and says, Man, Neo would have dug it the most. She makes a rainbow. Music swells. Credits.
Oof. What's the title?
It is The Matrix Rebooted, which I'd almost bet you is what they're going to call the fourth one.
That would make sense.
Yeah.
I mean, there's real cool ideas there.
Yeah, I know. It could be better.
What I'm going to ask first before we start voting is, does anybody like any pitch they've heard more than the proposed Reloaded Revolutions amalgamation by Topher Grace?
Oh, yeah.
I don't want that movie. I want Reloaded, but it's longer, and Revolutions, but it's longer. I can watch another hour of each of those movies.
What does Topher Grace have to do with any of this?
Oh, he edited the Star Wars prequels into one movie. He personally took his time and took episodes 1, 2, and 3 and made them into a movie that is supposedly really badass and works really well.
Yeah, but he you literally can't have that because that's George Lucas's property and they're just not.
Right, it's not available online or anywhere, but supposly that happened. Okay. And he's done it again with something else. I don't know.
Oh, okay. I had no context for that. And I just it kept coming.
Sorry, yeah.
I got to say something.
Okay, so then we're not voting, because I'm going to vote for that. It looks like I have no one else voting for that.
I'm sorry to leave you in your moment of need.
Well, no, to be honest, I'm trying to help Reloaded and Revolutions out, so I'm pretty surprised.
If they need any help, fine as is.
I think their flaws only heighten them.
What? Wait, what?
Yeah. I just like the movies.
Okay, so then the next one on the voting block is Model by Travis McMaster, which I'll vote for. I like that.
I would like to give a half a vote to both Model and the second Matrix because I think they should be part of the new Animatrix. What do you call it? Anthology. So I vote for both.
You're talking
one.
About Lauren as well.
Yes.
Okay, so we have just for Model we have 3 votes because Lauren didn't vote for it.
Thank you, Paul, for drawing that to everyone.
Say 2.5. 2.5. I'm splitting my vote halfway between Lauren and Travis.
The Matrix Retrogression. How many votes? I'll give that a vote.
Well done, Lauren.
Thank you. Still only half a vote, huh?
Well, yeah.
Okay, so how many votes for the Animatrix 2000?
Oh yeah, 1,000% that. That's
yeah. No vote. Oh,
everyone.
Okay, cool. Unanimous.
I'm going to take my half
that's
vote for Travis's thing and put it onto this vote. How about that?
Wheel is rolling. All right, bet's closed. Bet's off.
All right,
so it works.
And Mario's prequel. What was that called? Did that have a name?
That was called the Penultimatrix.
I'm going to say throw that into the Animatrix 2000,
all right.
And it can a half vote from me, I guess, if we're doing that.
I now regret introducing half votes.
Okay, so then
I'll vote for it. I'll vote for it.
I will also.
So 1.5. Okay, 2.5. Okay, so the next is Hack the Matrix, which I wouldn't come up with if I wouldn't watch it.
Can I ask you a question? If I vote for it, does it imply that I am voting for it over the sequels we got?
No.
Right? Okay, and I will vote for it.
Thank you, Mario.
You're welcome, Paul.
Still not voting.
Other
I, for
Yeah,
one, would
I
like to
see
be
that.
asked back on the show, so.
I was really kind of bummed that
okay.
Mario was laying out the rules for voting so clearly before I was going to not vote, but I'm sorry, yes, I'm still not voting. In addition to
Yeah,
my vote, I choose to withhold voting for. Thank you, Mario.
I'm just gonna, I guess, without asking, assume that I couldn't see Lauren's hand raised. But yeah, all right. Pearls Before Swine. Moving on to The Matrix Rebooted, which I will vote for.
I will also vote for that.
No.
Okay, great. 3 votes. Okay, so The Animatrix 2000 is our winner.
How did I beat you?
You're too fast.
Don't tell me you don't believe in me.
I credit everyone except myself as writing that. Because I actually followed the rules of the podcast. So
I'm so mortified, honestly. I'm so sorry, Paul.
no, that's what it's about, and none of us are gonna be the Wachowskis here. So
Right.
it is an endless source to mine ideas from. That's what's so cool about it. A lot of people didn't dig what they got from the trilogy, but I don't begrudge it having a trilogy. It absolutely deserved that, and then some, and I'm super excited to see the next one. So,
Hell yeah.
Hi.
All right, well, so then before we wrap it up, any plugs from anyone?
Golly. You can find me on Twitter if you think that's a good idea. You can follow me at Aquacong. That's my hacker name.
That's so embarrassing for you.
I'll go next because mine's not exciting. I have an Etsy shop. Pop that Funko. I do custom Funkos. Thank you.
Is that a reference to Pop that?
World of words to explore with both fun and funk. You don't have to go stampeding towards pop if it's that precariously close to pussy for you.
I feel like I know I wouldn't like Travis's idea as much, whatever his suggestion was.
No suggestions. As ever, just critiquing the way you all think.
We appreciate it, I guess. What?
Oh, I do want to plug one thing. In the email that you sent us all for the Ringer conversation we're recording on, you quoted the Clerks cartoon episode referencing The Matrix. God bless you for doing that.
Favorite joke.
Clerks cartoon show was very, very, very funny in 2004. It's still funny now, just in a 2004 way. I'm not even going to say the quote. If anyone's listening, just go Google it and find it for yourself. Maybe it will send you on a rabbit hole of discovering how charming that show was. Good on you, Mark.
I was a big Smith head back in the day. I mean,
Sure.
I still am a Smith head, but I was a big Smith head.
Hey, man, we all walk the same basic film school boy path.
I didn't.
Yeah. Thank you for coming, Mario. We would love to have you back on again, maybe talking about one movie instead of
Good Lord.
a million.
Thank you so much. I'm going to pass.
On the next follow-up Showdown.
We have got a full house of gorgeous guests here to talk about today's movie, Sex and the City 2.
I don't want to spoil it, but I think we decided we all have a little bit of Miranda.
Kim helped me to realize that I am a Steve Charlotte.
That's a great combo.
It's pretty hot.